So welcome back. Now in my first lecture, I have given the simple example, and in second lecture, in this lecture, I will not give any example, but I will explain some of the existing theories of barrierless chemical reactions. I must confess that for this lecture also, I have referred that book, again Biman Bagchi's Barrierless Chemical Reactions. And in addition to that, I have also referred some of the other research papers, of course, written by the Biman Bagchi and his collaborators. But basically you can call that most of the reaction is based on that Biman Bagchi's research papers. So again, it is some introduction part that many chemical and biological fast reactions do not have any activation barriers in their motion along with the reaction coordinate. But our objective is that how do we monitor that motion without the activation energy. Second, just again, it is not also very old paper. As I told you that this is a very new paper, and why I am very happy to see that any student, even an undergraduate student, can understand actual meaning of the barrierless chemical reactions. And you see that is paper is 2023, American Chemical Society Physical Chemistry paper. But I have only used their diagram just to understand the barrierless chemical reactions. I am not discussing their theories and other things. Otherwise, we will. So normal, same thing. You see, this is with barrier, normal reactions, high barrier, and in some cases, as you have seen, some of the intermediate also shown some of the activation energy. So that is called the submerged barrier. But this last part, so you see here, this is actually barrierless chemical reactions. And same thing I have taken from another very good journal, Nature Chemistry. Nature, one of the most important journal. And again, it is only for the student. Any undergraduate student can also understand transition state, and most of the barrierless chemistry, there is a well like that. So this is called the potential energy and the reaction coordinate. So these are the simple. Now I am coming to the theory. Now again, I must confess that there have been many theoretical and experimental research and publications to explain the barrierless chemical reactions. Many times I told you that significant progress has been made for these barrierless chemical reactions, because most of the biological reactions are barrierless chemical reactions. But here I am only concentrating on theories based on Biman Bagchi's theory, and for the sake of simplicity and for the students of M.sc second semester, like I am using the simple equation, not very complicated equation. So I am not saying these are the only theories. So you see the title, my thing is that theories of the barrierless chemical reaction used in this lecture. It does not mean that there is only 4 theory or 5 theory. As I told you that I have followed this reaction dynamics edited by Professor Satyamurthy, and in chapter 5, Professor Bagchi has given a very good explanation of a concise report of the barrier, and it was published in 1991. So in this lecture, I have only covered this only 4 theories. So theories of barrierless chemical reaction used in this lecture. That's all. First theory, because why it is not first theory, but most of the, when I have referred large number of research paper, I found that the first observation was proposed by this Foster and Hoffman in 1971. So then I consider that this is the first theory. Then of course Professor Biman Bagchi's is 1983, like that he published this paper. So then I thought that it is 1980. It is not like that, because he has published large number of at least 10 to 15 research papers on the barrierless chemical reaction, starting from 1990, 1987 to 2008 and many. But I thought that Biman Bagchi's theory is there. And Ogman and Hoffield, again in same time they published. And recently, while searching the literature, I have found this research paper. So I will not explain the complete mathematical model. I will just show one or two things of that Aniruddha Chakravarti's model. I don't think it is a model. It is, I have used all these things for the student. That's all. Now, first is that, again I am saying same thing, that this again the main source of inspiration is that paper. Again and again I am just giving this reference because most of my literature graphs is based on this paper. Okay. So first point is that, you see why it is 1971, because he published, Foster and Hoffman published in Jet Physical Chemistry 1971. Now the first point is that time dependent survival probability of the excited state. You have seen donor and acceptor. With taking the photon, they just excited this thing very fast. Survival probability. There are 90 students, 60 students in this class. I always give this example, and passing percentage is suppose 80%. So they are just promoted to the fourth semester, third semester. If the percentage is 40%, 30%, 20%, survival probability will be less. So here, so that survival probability, I will give the example of this thing. Then time dependent reactant in solution is often viscosity dependent. So therefore we are interested in the determination of the Brownian moment, harmonic oscillator type of thing. Because the initial excited state relaxes towards its free energy minimum. Because when its survival probability is excited, these things, then there is a relaxation technique. That means it relaxes non-radiative radiation. And the non-radiative decay takes place from a position dependent scene. And as you see that Journal of Chemical Physics, Bagchi is also reactive the same. So how can we explain this thing? Very simple. That means if I plot a graph between reaction energy surface or potential energy surface and reaction coordinate, RC, shortcut. So again I am taking first the normal potential energy curve. Why I am taking two, suppose this is A and another is B. Deliberately, first is for photoisomerization, barrierless of course, because, and second is suppose electron transfer. Now this motion, and this is sink star, and this is triangle. Eye contact. Here I just changing the triangle here. Here we are getting. It is giving here. And the product so I am giving two examples. One is photoisomerization reaction. Both are barrierless type of the reaction. And this is the photon source. You can understand this source. Excited, ground excited state. Reactants and the product. Now what? And this minimum, this free energy minimum, the reaction sink is located, because when there is a decay, there must be some sink. Survival probability, how do I calculate this survival? So that we have to climb certain thing. Just to remember, so very small barrier, that reactant has to climb this thing. Has to climb this thing, that particular energy minimum. This is sink. And that is very important. It is position dependent sink. The sink can be changed. And here you see, in other cases, if I change this side, so they have to not climb. Like that. So one is photoisomerization. So the reaction sink is located at the minimum free energy state. Here is sink. But how do I calculate that motion? Now we need certain equations. And that equation is sometimes called the barrier, that Brownian movement and other things. The reactant has to climb to have activation, very small type of things. And the reactant can react on its downhill approach to the free energy approach. Now what is that equation? First equation is very simple equation, because our objective is that to know the survival probability. In some books it is written like that, change in survival probability dt in, of course, x direction, x coordinate in one direction, we can call it. So you have to just remember this terminology, survival probability, or decay towards the sink. And you have to monitor the rate constant of that sink, position dependent sink, and there are other factors if it is a diffusion control type of the reactions, because I have taken this from this research paper. So that is the reaction in the dispersive medium. So therefore viscous, then diffusion coefficient must be considered like that. So the reactive motion is described by the Samoilevsky. This is what are the various theory? They just modified the Samoilevsky equations. Brownian movement. If you understand the surface chemistry, then you can understand. So just to forget everything, you have to just calculate the survival probability. It is not like here. It will be here. Minus is here. It is not like that. Here is minus. So this is the first example, Foster and Hoffman, change in survival probability with respect to time in one direction. So this D is one type of operator, you can call it. And I'll explain all the things. You have to remember all these things. First is called the diffusion coefficient. Diffusion coefficient. Force Fx is the force from the reaction potential surface. And this is position dependent sink, which is very important. Again, I am coming to that point, that sink, rate constant, decay, they just accept this. So that position is very important. Everywhere you will get the position dependent sink and other things. So it is a popular generic model. In Biman-Bakshi, they modified this equation and you will get some complicated equation. And beta, you can call it is just like 1 by Boltzmann constant. Is a Boltzmann constant. Kb is the Boltzmann constant. And T is the absolute temperature. Boltzmann constant. So what I mean to say that it is a general model of chemical reaction, dispersive medium. Now I am coming to the second model. So the rate of decay from the sink increases when the energy gap between the excited and the ground state surface increases. Again, it depends upon the ground state and excited state is different. Foster and Hoffman model, now there are some certain limitations. Why Foster and Hoffman model are not very useful? Because there are some problems. When they compare with experimental results with the theoretical results, there is some mismatch. But ultimately, everybody used their survival probability model. They just slightly modified that equation. But ultimate thing is that determination of survival probability from the excited. Of course, the energy gap may be different. The excited state and the ground state, that may be different. There may be symmetry or asymmetry. I'll come to the next point. So now then Bakshi slightly modified that model, and again they have prepared a graph, same thing. Only thing is that here is also same potential energy surface. And it is, I think, photoisomerization reaction and reaction coordinate. What they have given? They have given, okay, one color is enough. One case, and second case is also slightly same. So I need some, and color can change. When the difference between ground state and excited state is not very different, very small. That is called symmetric type of thing. Symmetric sink. Symmetric sink. Again, you just correct it. reaction coordinate. Again, I can plot, no problem. Okay. Symmetric sink. Yes. In sink is symmetric. Same reaction, same case. But suppose there is some displacement. It is actually 0 and there is some displacement. Again, the color will be green. So this is slightly. So you see, this is asymmetric and first is symmetric. This is asymmetric. Here is also now on the basis of this, sometimes it is called the pinhole sink model. Pinhole sink model. This is sink. Again, I can call like that. I can call like that. It is called pinhole sink model, and there are some staircase model on the base. So on the basis of this observation, Professor Bakchi, because this is the ultimate, I must say this is the ultimate model. Bakchi developed the detailed theory of barrierless chemical reactions. And again, if you understand the Froster and Hoffman model, again there is a time dependence of that population density, survival probability, and they have taken some of the solvent, they have also considered some of the solvent parameters. Similar situation where is also they have taken the Smolensky equation, but now Professor Bakchi slightly modified this equation. And the experimental observable is most of the reaction is the system survival probability in excited potential energy state. And here is also sink is very important. Everywhere we are considering that sink is a symmetric or anti-symmetric type of the sink, because you know there is a slight displacement or anti-symmetric or displacement. So therefore position dependent rate constant. Position dependent rate constant is important. Sink, whether we change the sink or not. So on the basis of this experiment, he slightly modified that Smolensky equation. I am coming to that equation. So if you compare the first equation proposed by Foster and Hoffman, so here there is slightly modification, but here is same thing, dp change in survival probability time. It is actually operator. Smolensky you can write like that also. So there is no problem. So but here you must concentrate on two things. One is K0, because now we are coming to the rate constant, and KT. And S is the sink, T is the time, nothing new. So in one direction, so it is Smolensky operator. It is actually maybe like that, you can write like that, or you can simply write L. So don't worry about the notation and other things. Just you remember that is a operator, Smolensky operator, where they have taken the diffusion coefficient. You see the equation is almost same thing, but in place of this diffusion coefficient, they have taken a operator, Smolensky operator. So they have taken this operator, and this position dependent sink function. This is very important. This is a constant value, position dependent sink function. K0 non-radiative decay rate from the sink, and actual thing is the position independent radiative decay rate. This is important final equation. And then of course this operator value can be determined by the same, where is the, in place of diffusion coefficient we have taken two constant. A is Kb is Boltzmann constant, P Xi is the friction coefficient. This is frequency of harmonic surface and effective mass. So you have to just remember that one equation is enough. Don't write all these type of the equation. So it is the slight modification of that Froster and Hoffman model, and then of course still people are doing different types of modification. But one thing is clear, that whether it is a Froster and Hoffman method or Biemann-Baktis method, always they consider the survival probability of the excited potential state. They not consider the ground state condition. And in Chakravarti's model, same equation they use, but they consider the ground state as well as the potential energy, excited potential energy state. Anyway, then of course there is a competition between the rate of population relaxation of the excited states, potential surface, and rate of population loss from the sink region. The relaxation depends upon the sink function, because always there is a competition between these two things. Whatever these things. Then the last model, most of the biological reaction, I am not writing the details of that model, but because that model is not very popular and like that, but they propose the theoretical model to study the kinetics of rebinding of carbon monoxide and oxygen to the imine myoglobin reactions, biological reactions. And some other scientists also studied the solvent effects on non-adiabatic electron transfer reactions, and they just calculate the time dependent total survival probability can be calculated from the whole range. So that is Ogden and Hopfield model. Now last, very briefly, I will just show you some equation, but don't worry for that equation. So this the latest, I must say, that is because sometimes there is a problem for calculation of this probability density. So what he proposed, that actually most of these cases, this survival probability which is time dependent, of course, and it is reactive motion is a diffusive motion along with the reaction coordinate. Here we are only taking only x direction. So in the absence of activation barrier, if there is no activation barrier, naturally you see, there is no clear separation of time scale between the motion of the reactive region and the other part of the potential energy surface. So therefore he considered both the things, reactant as well as the product, ground state and excited state. So that is their actually final equations. So time dependent probability distribution of the reaction on the reactant potential surface, and the same are the product and product potential surface. So the reactant is excited from the ground state. So there are two equations. One is for ground state, another the subsequent relaxation bring the reactant down towards the product region. So the equation is little bit big. First thing is that the survival probability is defined using same thing by averaging over the entire reaction coordinate. the motion of the system of the excited potential energy surface and the reaction described by the position dependent sink term along with the reaction coordinate. According to him, none of the theoretical studies so far have considered any effect on the ground potential energy state. What I have just told you. According to him, I am not saying that his theory is 100% correct. But first time he considered the ground potential energy surface, as well as, of course, the excited potential energy. So there is no problem, excited potential energy surface. So therefore, there will be two equations. One equation for excited potential energy surface, another equation for ground potential energy surface. So if you see this equation, Chakravarti proposed the probability on the excited potential energies and ground potential energies. So how he differentiate between the ground state and potential state? Only just suppose this is survival probability, excited state, you can write E. Suppose the survival probability of the ground state, so again it is G, and time dependence, position dependence, sink constant, everything is same. You see, one is on a K0 is also there, K0 is also there, Kr is actual, we have to calculate this K. Survival probability is there. Again, same thing, there is also operator is also there. Everything is same, only thing is that, but in order to solve, he has used different types of mathematics to finally solve that equation. Again, you see that this part is also same, but because it is related to some diffusion and other things, so this volume element is also important. And it is actually K0 is the same thing, rate of the non-radiative decay, and Kr is the rate of the radiative decay, which is to be calculated. Now, to solve this two systems, he used different types of mathematics. He has taken Kr to be independent of the position. That means he don't bother about whether there is a change in sink or not. But according to him, Chakravarti's model is more general than the earlier models. The motion on the ground state potential energy surface is also considered. Before excitation, the system is the ground state potential energy surface and its solvent is at finite temperature. Just remember the first example, T and X and Y. First case, then it is de-excited and then it reacts with this X and Y. Just I am not giving the whole example. So then he used the Frank quantum principle, and there are so many other complicated chemical reactions. I have directly taken this example, all these things, and I am coming to the last point, that in this equation Chakravarti generalized the standard model with the inclusion of effects from non-steady state population dynamics on the product potential energy surface too. So student, you have seen such type of complicated system of the barrierless chemical reactions. So it is a glimpse of literature available in the on the barrierless chemical reaction. So my suggestion is that on the basis of my lectures, my two lectures, and with the help of some literature, now you are able to at least prepare a short notes on the barrierless chemical reaction, and that will be sufficient for your examination point of view. That means what is actual barrierless chemical reaction, now you can understand as per the concept of the activation energy. You have seen some of the very simple example, and basically, but rely on Biman-Bagchi's theory, which is rather simple theory. But if you want to learn for research activities, this Chakravarti's model will be very, very useful. Otherwise, Foster and Hoffman you can write, and then the final model of the Biman-Bagchi, how to calculate the survival probability of the excited potential energy state. So we are just measuring the decay of these things because the reactions are very fast. Thank you.